Hey everybody, welcome to the show. This week, two aspects of psychological change. Not two types of psychological change, two aspects of psychological change. There's only one type of psychological change, but there's two different aspects to it. If you have a difficult time changing, if you find yourself starting and stopping, or you change a little bit, but it's really painful, it seems like it's more painful than it needs to be. And because of that, it doesn't really seem like you're improving. Doesn't really seem like your life is going in one direction. It's going all over the place. Then this will be the presentation, the podcast, the show for you. Yeah, the presentation. Head on over to YouTube to check out these awesome slides. First, I'm going to say animusempire.com/schedule. We do free 30-minute consultations. Maybe I might be able to help you. And if not, I'm going to point you in a direction that would be more helpful. It is win-win. You will be moving in the right direction in your life if you go to animusempire.com/schedule, make an appointment, or reach out to me with any questions, animus@animusempire.com. Overview for this week. Part 1 will just be a big picture. Part 2, growth is a paradox. We'll discuss why psychological growth feels like a paradox. And it would explain why just a lot of people don't change. And that's the truth. A lot of people don't change. Times change, people don't. That is true. But there is an extent to which you can change if you just apply the right pressure to the right areas. In this presentation, we're going to talk about those areas that we need to apply pressure to. And then part 3 will be the animus and anima. Give you some indication of where we're going with this. And then part 4, examples of what I mean. Examples of how to change. Examples of what you could incorporate into your life to change. But yeah, we're going to go from big picture to small picture. So I guess deduction, as Aristotle would say. So if there is just a recipe for getting unstuck, in addition to my ebook, all my videos, this will just be one more tool you can use. Just, you feel stuck, you don't feel like you can change, the situation in your life is determined by external forces. There's nothing you can do about it. No real sense of agency. This is how you're going to do it. It's still going to be difficult. I think change is always going to be difficult, and it's going to bring up unexpected things for you, that you never would have seen coming. That's the definition of unexpected. But I think this will make it a lot smoother. It'll make it smoother. It'll make it more manageable. And it's going to make it more manageable because there is a definite thing that you can do to make the whole process smoother. There's a structure for your mind, and based on the structure of your mind, there's a way to change. Okay, so part 1, the big picture. Something that I noticed when I was doing my internships is that change is predictable. When people change, it's always the same story. And when they don't change, it's always the same story. When we look at this issue, when we look at psychology with enough perspective, we can see definite patterns here. I worked with pretty difficult patients. Patients who are going through some very difficult things like real abuse, real drug addiction. And I don't know, there's always this sense that I didn't like. I didn't like, so when people would die, and people would die, I didn't like that we would lament. It seemed popular to lament, let me just say that, it's just there's no rhyme or reason to this. We're all dealing with this thing that's very difficult if you're going through serious trauma or you're trying to recover from serious drug abuse. It just seems poetic, or it just seems socially more acceptable to say, oh, geez, who knows why somebody would just go out and kill themselves, or who knows why they would die. And the whole time I'm thinking, no, I could see that. Based on what he was talking about, I could see it wasn't going in a good direction. And how he was talking about it, it wasn't looking good. I think that we have a difficult time seeing the rhyme and reason because the rhyme and reason of change isn't concrete. It's abstract. But I do think it is there. There are patterns there. And we don't do anybody we do everybody a disservice when we say there's no rhyme or reason to it. There is a mental health epidemic going on right now because psychologists are walking around with the back of their hands firmly glued to their forehead saying, oh, there's no rhyme or reason. I mean, again, bridge building analogy. What if engineers said that when a bridge collapsed? Oh, there's no rhyme or reason. No, there is a rhyme or reason. Let's figure out rules for building bridges. Let's figure out maybe not rules, but fundamental principles of our psychology. I think there is a rhyme or reason. You just got to know where to look. And here are the 4 different cases that I saw. The first one was the patient is focused on the wrong thing in the wrong way. Nowhere near where they need to be. The second one is focused on the wrong thing in the right way. This may not make sense. Again, we're going big picture to small picture. Not the best way to teach, but I think it's the best way to set up this episode. And the third way is you're focused on the right thing, but in the wrong way. So you focus on the thing that actually is the problem, but you're doing it in all the wrong way. And then the fourth thing is you focus on the right thing, what actually is your issue, your fundamental issue, and you're doing it in the right way. It's really not the right thing so much, but just the right issue. The most fundamental issue that you're dealing with. So if you have a problem with alcohol, the fundamental issue may not be the alcohol. In fact, it usually isn't. The alcohol is just a symptom of something else. But my question to you is, which one of these 4 cases bring about the most psychological change? There's 2 of them, and 2 of them don't. That's right, 2 and 4. Focus on the wrong thing in the right way or focus on the right thing in the right way. It almost doesn't matter what you focus on so much as long as you do it in, quote, the right way. Well, what is the right way? That's what we're going to be talking about. And it's the right way because it's self-correcting. So you can be focused on the wrong thing, but as long as you do it in the right way, you're inadvertently going to get to the right thing. I think that's why this is so important, so powerful. It's just like evolution. You put this process in place, you just put the right parameters in the algorithm and let it go, and it'll take care of itself. It'll find the best solution for the environment. And if you apply this way of changing, it's going to do the same for your psychology. So what I just said there in the previous slide is, it's not what you do so much, it's how you do it. And I'll quote my brother Craig on this. I remember he used to say that all the time. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. Now, sometimes it's what you do. But I'm going to argue in the context of working on your psychology, it's way more important to focus on how you do it. And so what's the sign that you're stuck on 1 or 3? I mean, what's the number one sign? When the guy goes out and in between group sessions and you find out that he's dead. What was he saying in the last session when I saw him? He's saying this: how long is it going to take? You're on 2 or 4 when you don't really care anymore. If the problem isn't solved, however serious the problem may be, and I was dealing with some really serious problems in some of these patients, alcoholism, like just real trauma, just stuff it's just terrible. But when you're on 2 or 4, you don't care if the problem's solved. It almost doesn't matter. I mean, from a certain perspective, of course, it kind of does. And if you're struggling with alcoholism, I mean, it's going to be a lot better if you handle that problem and stop drinking. But you're okay in a sense when the problem isn't solved, like you're fine with it. It's about getting the right process. Like I was saying, like evolution. Evolution is not a goal, it's a process. A self-correcting process. That's what we're going to talk about this week. I just will say, here's the caveat: only time a process is good. Everybody's on Twitter, or probably more likely on Instagram. Life's about the journey, it's not the destination. No, life is about the destination. Believe that. Life is definitely about getting to where you want to go. Don't say life is about the journey, not the destination, to somebody who's really destitute, like just not making money, borderline homeless, working on real psychological issues. No, it's about getting certain things that you need to stay alive. Psychologically alive, if nothing else. But I will say, psychologically, it is helpful to think of it as a process. Philosophy, not a process. Philosophy is, let's get to the right answers here. A is A. Basic fundamental laws of existence, laws of identity. That's fundamental. There is a black and white, and we are going there. We are the Continental Congress figuring out the best way to set up the country. It's not a process, even though, they of course turn that into a process, a self-correcting process, or something that could be corrected over time. Science, you're building a bridge. We need the result here. This is not about the journey. This is about the destination. But when it comes to psychology and when it comes to changing, it's not so much about, right? It's not who you are, but who you are becoming. Your identity ends up being who you are becoming. There is right and wrong in psychology. There are principles on which we base psychology, I think. So there is right or wrong to some degree, but when it comes to you and your personal change, it is about the process. Part 2, paradox of growth. Why do we even need to talk about change in the first place? Why is this even a difficult topic? Why is change difficult? That's the thing. And then there's lots I could talk about here, but to sum it up, I'll just give you this image here. If you're listening, this is the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. We need to eat ourselves before we get the nutrition from it, from our tail. That's why, because we don't get the nutrition first. Another way of saying this, what we need is right on the other side of what we're not ready to do. So it's a paradox. Psychological change, when we think about it this way, it's a fundamental paradox. Oh, I need to change to do this or that, so I can get this thing that I need to change in the first place. That's why it's just this recurring thing, the snake eating its own tail. You have to eat yourself. You have to eat a part of yourself, and that eating a part of yourself can be extremely painful, of course, to get the thing that you need. And this is very difficult when psychology doesn't even have a structure, because you don't even, when you're eating your own tail, you don't even know if it's right to be eating. Is this the right tail to be eating? So we got to come up with the structure. So the eating your own tail, at least when you're eating your own tail and going through the pain of it, you know fundamentally that it's going to get you the nutrition from the tail. So what are some examples of this? Just some common ones. Well, you got to talk to girls to get confidence, but you need confidence to talk to girls. Yeah, I would talk to girls. I would have a girlfriend, or I would have confidence to have a girlfriend if I already had a girlfriend. Well, it doesn't work out that way. You have to eat your own tail first. You have to communicate resentment to overcome resentment. It just helps to bring awareness to resentment, see your part in the resentment, crucial. If you feel resentment toward especially one particular person, you got to talk to them about it. You got to be open, not in a way to blame them, but just let's bring this up into the open so I can become more aware of it. And when I'm more aware of it, it's less likely to affect me. But the resentment keeps me from communication. Real bummer. We all notice this. I sort of hinted at it earlier. The phenomenon of once you get a girlfriend, then every girl's a crush on you. Or it's easier to find a job once you already have a job. Yeah, as soon as you get a job, then everybody starts emailing you, asking you to apply. It's like, where were you for the 6 months? I was struggling every day. And then independence that comes from ending an abusive relationship, you can only get by ending an abusive relationship. You need the independence to end it, but you only get the independence once you end it. Or, when you push through, when you keep trying to make yourself push through, you find yourself going back to where you started. Unless you can understand this process. You can make yourself feel good for a couple weeks. Let's say talking to girls, right? You can do it for a couple weeks and you feel really good, but then you just stop for whatever reason and think, oh, this is stupid. So you stop and you're just right back to where you started. Well, maybe even worse, because now you have all the shame of, I started this thing and then I stopped. So the trick is, how do you get the confidence without the external validation? How do I get the I have a girlfriend energy when you don't have a girlfriend? Or at least loosen up the process. The Ouroboros is inescapable. It's there, but maybe we can do something to make the tail more digestible, a pre-digested tail. That might be helpful. Now, there's really no real way to do this, ultimately, not to spoil it to you, for you, but we can make this process a lot easier if nothing else. But first, let's take a step back. It almost seems like we've had this Ouroboros symbol for thousands of years across multiple cultures. It almost seems like there's something else in charge. We're trying to create a symbol for something else of being in charge. We are not in charge. There's another part of us. We have to create symbols that communicate it, because there's something else that we're in charge. The something else is we're addicted to it. We're addicted to being where we are. This thing that makes us in charge, we're addicted to that feeling of it being in charge and not us. So you haven't been employed for a few months and you go out to send your resume and you feel really good and you feel a change happening, but you collapse back into the isolation, the self-pity, the resentment. Wouldn't be so bad, except you're addicted to that isolation, that self-pity, and that resentment. I think I tweeted today, if you don't think you're on drugs, newsflash, you are. You just don't realize it because you're your own dealer. Oh, who are these people with these drug problems? Oh, this opioid epidemic. Oh, these losers. Guess who else is on drugs? There was an emotional addiction epidemic way before the opioid epidemic. That it was just an easier way to get it. I would argue ultimately, just as an aside, there's an Oedipal epidemic before the opioid epidemic. That's essentially what's going on. The opioid epidemic, it just simulates that Oedipal addiction. By the way, great stuff coming up this week on the Brazen Heads. I finished Infinite Jest earlier this week, and boy, if you want to talk about Oedipal issues and just a lot of things that I talk about in Animus, a lot of that came up in Infinite Jest for sure. We are definitely dealing with those issues now. Anyway, that's an aside. Yeah, so it's like there's something else in charge. And indeed, there are. I mean, this has been said in a bunch of different ways. We have a conscious, we have a subconscious. That's how I phrase it in Man's Guide to Psychology. We have reason, we have emotions, we have a head, we have a heart. Oh, I just got to do what the heart wants, or, I want to be logical, but I just keep being pulled in emotional directions. We have thinking slow and thinking fast. This is a great book. Great breakdown of this process by Daniel Kahneman. Lengthy, but it really just lays out the foundation, what we've already known, and just new research, bunch of new evidence. Thinking Fast and Slow. Great book to read about this. And we have masculine and feminine, another way of saying it. Or the Jungian way of saying it would be we have an animus and we have an anima. We have two different parts of ourselves. And probably why we aren't changing, or in part why we're not changing, in part why it's so difficult, is because these two aren't communicating. If we're being pulled in two different directions, then we're not going to change. Yeah. But yeah, I do talk about this in Man's Guide to Psychology. I guess one of the criticisms that I received as another aside here is that I oversimplify some parts of psychology, but I just don't think it's worth going into because guys like Daniel Kahneman just are gonna go into way more depth than I ever will. And the book wasn't meant to go into depth in any one particular thing. Like I think there's one line in there about evolutionary psychology. It's gotten some criticism for that. Yeah, maybe that's all it deserves. I do think evolutionary psychology is important, but maybe in the book of psychology, it only deserves a few lines. So there may be two types of change here, is the idea. I mean, if there's two parts of us, right? We know that. There's two parts of us. Maybe there's two types of change. Stands to reason, doesn't it? But I would argue there's an overabundance of one of the kinds of change, while only paying lip service to another kind of change. So those are the two different parts of us, and these are the two different kinds of change. I'm going to say it masculine and feminine. We could say it animus, anima. That's just the first thing I thought of. There's masculine change and there's feminine change. There's results-oriented change, and there's process-oriented change. Oop, missed a dash there. Now we're way more focused. Psychology is because it has become a hegemony, way focused on the masculine change, but pays only lip service to the feminine change. I think we're going to see if we ultimately want to resolve this issue, we need to figure out how both of these are just one side of the other. So masculine change would be something like assignments. I'm going to go out and do X, Y, Z. I'm going to make myself do this. Feminine change would be more like ritual. Masculine change would be affirmations. If you sit down to meditate, it's going to be more affirmation focus, more about changing your mindset consciously. Feminine change would be more about exploration. What are you feeling? How does that feel to feel that? Masculine would be monk mode. Feminine would be togetherness, purpose versus meaning. Masculine is more about making difficult decisions. You got to make difficult decisions to change. Feminine is more about easier decisions. Easier, more consistent decisions, intellect, emotions, Masculine is more focused on masculine change, just changing, and then feminine change is more focused on simply acceptance. So we have a high order here and a low order. And a huge gaffe in psychology, just by the way, is thinking that you're in low order when really you're in high order. So just develop a purpose for your life. Oh, you want to be an alpha? I mean, how many freaking videos on YouTube are like that? Oh, you want to be an alpha? Well, just develop a purpose for your life. Yeah, no kidding. That is high order, and you're thinking that it's low order. Oh, you want to get over this fear of talking to girls? Just go talk to girls. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Captain Circular Reasoning. But that is high order decision making, and we have to look at the low order. What makes up this decision? Though, yeah, there's a lip service only paid to the exploration. Where was I going? Yeah, I mean, and yeah, just the meaning. I guess, let me just say, I mean, this is what I was talking about with the myth, the write your own myth that I mentioned a couple weeks ago. Right? That's a change in a way. That's a very feminine kind of change. Just look at your life, accept it. Look at the emotions you were going through. Explore what was going on. This is typically easier than just, just developing a purpose. There's a lot that goes into developing your purpose. Writing your own myth may be one of those. Create meaning from that, and from that, it's easier to see who you are, and when you see who you are, you can go on and create your own purpose. Anyways, just some indication of how these two can link up. So, yeah, let's deconstruct these two aspects of change. And again, aspects, I think I have an asterisk there, because it just means aspects, not types. Because each of these different kinds of change, we see them as two different parts of us and two different kinds of change, but that's the error. And the basis of my unification is they're just different sides of the same coin. When we look at them from a proper unified view of psychology, and then we can makes it a lot easier to integrate them, which I guess would be a corollary of the unified theory. So yeah, the problem is that we see them as two types, but they're really just two aspects of the same type. So part 3, I'm just going to call it Animus and Anima. Let's deconstruct what these changes are. So Animus change, or just maybe not change, I have written there incorporation, just how to incorporate this change into our life. Well, it's going to be marked by inconsistent decision making, difficult decisions, like you're going to be making more difficult decisions, and it's going to be in disregard to the anima, to your heart. Like, right, just when guys say, oh, I don't care what your emotions are, just do A, B, and C, which of course can totally be useful in a certain context. But if you're really looking for overall change, consistent change, it's probably not going to come this way. So what are some examples of animus change? I'm going to say something to my boss for once. I'm going to stand up to my boss. You know, when he does A, B, and C in the meeting, I'm going to say something. Right? Like it's inconsistent. It's not something that comes up every day. It's a difficult decision, but it still can be helpful. I'm going to ask out that girl over there. Not asking out to girls in general or talking to girls in general, but right, you're in math class, there's that one girl who you like. There's only 3 weeks left to the end of the semester. I got to say something. Okay, I'm going to plan out what I say. Can be helpful. But this is a difficult decision and cannot be made consistently. Another example would just be a job interview coming up. I mean, this isn't going to be consistent, right? This is difficult. We have a difficult time in job interviews. I got to get this job. But I would argue this isn't fundamental change. I mean, this can be helpful. Obviously, if there's a girl who you're afraid to ask out and you've kind of been developing a weird crush on from across the lecture hall, then you got to go talk to her. But I would also submit that this is not how you change. Going to one job interview, it's not going to change. And if you get the job and you do really well, you feel good. No question. But as far as changing who you are, which would involve changing the subconscious, the unconscious part of you, it's probably not going to do it. This is a difficult one for me. Ask for a letter of recommendation. I just have a very difficult time doing that. I had to do this recently. It's just something about it feels painful to me. But you do it. You make yourself do it. Now, have I fundamentally changed because of this? No. But I think that's the fantasy. That's the animus fantasy. And this is what guys get trapped in all the time. Girls too, but I just see a lot more with guys. This one action is going to change me. But it doesn't. Very common, where this is common with women is, women, we could argue for whatever biological, psychological, sociological reason, they're just not as assertive as men. They're not as typically assertive, but they're put in this working environment where they now need to be more assertive, but they're just not practiced at it. So when it comes time for them to be assertive, maybe they don't do it and it builds up over time and then they do the thing, okay, I'm going to stand up to my boss. I'm going to say something in the meeting and then they say it and then it comes off as bitchy and people don't respond to them in the best way and they say, it's because, you just don't like a assertive woman. No, you're just not that well practiced at it. You need to, quote, integrate your anima to get you to the place where you make that kind of decision. And a lot of men get stuck here too, of course. Like the nerdy guy who doesn't assert himself. It's very similar. It just seems like the obvious thing to do. I just gotta do the obvious thing. Like I'm stuck. I'm gonna look at the thing where I feel the most stuck, where my boss says something or when my boss degrades me in front of other people in this meeting. So that's the thing I need to change. That's a fantasy. Or you feel stuck and the most obvious thing is your living situation. You don't have great roommates. Now, I'm not saying to not change as the roommate, but we have this fantasy of I'm just going to change this one thing, or I'm going to change my career, or I'm going to get a new career, or a new girlfriend, or a new wife, and that's going to solve the problem. It usually doesn't. There's something else going on. But then there's the anima change, which is consistent. It's easy. It's a decision that you can make pretty much every day. And it is a complete disregard to the presenting problem. Whatever you think your problem is. You think you're stuck. You think it's your boss. You think it's your girlfriend. It doesn't. You just completely disregard the problem. I mean, even as I say that, you feel the relief. Whatever you think your biggest problem is, you don't have to worry about that. That's the beauty of the anima, the incorporation of the anima kind of change. And I'm telling you, you may not have a problem like this. I mean, you probably do if you're honest about yourself. But when you really feel bogged down by a problem, this is the only way to change. It's only going to happen when you start incorporating this anima change. This is the beauty. I think this is the genius of 12 steps, 12-step programs. Just how they can be super helpful, even though, philosophically, there are some problems there for sure. And some of the language they use is not helpful. And how, they think of mental illness as a disease. I can see how that can be helpful in a certain context, but it's just not true. But it almost doesn't matter, because if you have a problem with drinking, the solution is no longer stop drinking. You just do away with that for a little bit. If you have a problem with drinking, why don't you just go to this meeting once a day for a year, 2 years, whatever it is. You don't have to do that. You just stop focusing on this thing that you keep being bothered by and you keep beating yourself up over. And, I'm going to create a no drinking plan. Every alcoholic has a story like that, right? But we all do that. That's the thing. We're all something aholics. We're all emotional aholics to a certain degree. I'm going to create a stop feeling sorry for myself. I'm going to wake up every day and do my affirmations, and I've made 500 word documents out of it. Maybe that's not the solution. Maybe the solution is to do something that completely just takes you out of that. Maybe the solution isn't to come up with a sobriety plan and, I'm going to take these supplements that I heard. If you take these supplements and you don't feel like drinking as much. Which maybe if you just have a problem with drinking, you can do that. But if you have a serious addiction, then it's just going to be worse. So, one of the beauties of 12-step is you could just take yourself out of that and do something completely else. Just start speaking to this other part of you that's ultimately in control. And because it's so easy to do, and because you can do it so consistently, because it's easy to do, you can create now a ritual out of it and not focus so much on having a, maybe as we would say, routine. So here's some anima examples. Therapy, yeah, it's like 12 steps. Therapy, group therapy. Now I go to group therapy once a week, and I go see a individual one-on-one therapy once a week. And we may not even be talking about why I'm here, the divorce with my wife. It may not even be helpful to talk to that, but now I'm creating something to do apart from the resentment I have over my ex-wife. I may talk about her, may talk about my issues around her, or we may not. Like what I was saying in the beginning. You can do the wrong thing, you can focus on the wrong thing, quote the wrong thing, but as long as you do it in the right way, in a ritualistic way, it almost doesn't matter. And this is just group therapy is crucial in this process, more so than individual therapy. Because individual therapy is, more directed, more we got to talk about this thing. Group is, hey, what's everybody else want to talk about? And how do I relate with you? Just completely takes you out of it's like, right, like I always say, your dog sniffing something on the ground and you can see it's getting engrossed and just entrenched and meshed with this thing that's sniffing on the ground. For my dog, it's goose poop. And then just like a little slight jerk to the left or the right, just to the side on the collar. It's like, oh yeah, just kind of snaps you out of it. Journal is why I think journaling is really important. Because this is easy. You can do it every day. And you don't even have to be that good at it. Just writing out facts of what happened in your life. Now, if you join Animus group or if you do the unconscious map with me, or by unconscious map the course, there is a, I think there's an optimal way to journal. It's very similar to the optimal way to meditate, which I go into. But, even bad journaling, again, you're doing the wrong thing, focusing on the wrong issue, but in the right way, it will self-correct eventually. Call your mom, reaching out to family members. Almost like get out of yourself in a sense. You have a problem with your dad. Okay. You can try to make yourself forget the resentment that you have towards your dad. Or you could take your dad out to dinner once a week, once a month. I don't know. Take your dad out to dinner somewhere that would be good for him. I mean, as long as he's not like abusive or anything and it's not like really traumatizing. It depends on the situation. But in most situations, even in situations where you think, oh, my dad did so many horrible things, he doesn't deserve to go out to dinner with his son. Yeah, you're not doing it for your dad. You're doing it for you. Big difference. Reach out to family members in general. I mean, these, we can argue all day about to the extent that these relationships have influenced you. I mean, they've influenced you, we can definitely say, more than any other relationship, that's for sure. Except maybe the relationship to your own genes, who knows. But, so if you want to change, you got to start changing these relationships. And you'll be surprised. All these issues with your family or your dad or your mom, all I got to do is talk to them more. Very possible, as long as you do it in the right way. Which you talk about if you go through an unconscious map or Animus group. Another great example of anima change is any excuse to have another picture of Notre Dame is go to church. Again, like 12 step. I mean, hey, let's argue all day about the philosophical problems with Christianity or any other religion for that matter. I love doing it. And when I argue about these things, I gotta be honest, I'm right a lot. But it doesn't matter. Just the process of going somewhere, saying hi to people. How is your day, Rick? Or how is your week? Or, the pastor, the minister, the priest said this. Let's talk about it. Very important in this kind of change. But what's the anima fantasy? There's an animus fantasy. The anima fantasy is, well, I don't have to focus on the issue. Everything's just going to happen. Which is true. I mean, you will begin to act differently. But it's still vital to make yourself do something. A part of change is making yourself, like if you're uncomfortable talking to the boss, it's not going to be consistent, it's not going to be part of the routine, it's not easy to do. An important part of change is standing up for yourself and saying something differently. But it's a lot easier, right? It just gets a lot easier when you do the real change, the anima change. So if you find yourself stuck, try thinking about changing this different way. Oh, I got this problem. Oh, I've been depressed for 5 years. I got to focus on that. Maybe you don't. In fact, maybe it's better if you don't focus on that. Incorporate some other way to change. So I'll just go through some anima change ritual examples. So this is just something you could do every day. Or okay, go to group once a week, but meditate, read something that's important to you. I mean, I think I mentioned in Man's Guide to Psychology back when I was an undergrad. I was just, going through a much more difficult time than I am now. I'm a 20-year-old guy. It's just difficult to be a 20-year-old guy. I would read Nathaniel Branden's 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem just a little bit every day. And it wasn't so much that I agree with a lot of the book. In fact, I disagree with a lot of it. He commits the same errors I was talking about. Looking at a high order concept and pretending like it's low order. It's clearly not. But it was just helpful to me to read something that I thought was at least somewhat important every day. Other examples in my life, Emerson. I have self-reliance, and it just, just something about it. It just makes sense to me. It's something I can just read and incorporate every day. So whatever I'm struggling with, whatever I'm going through, it's like it doesn't matter. I have this way of taking care of this other part of me that makes, any kind of conscious, concrete change in my life a lot more natural. Meditation can be a huge part of this. Going to group and just calling friends or, calling members of your family. And so this would just be something that you do every day. I'm not telling you what to do, but just come up with some ritual for you that you can do no matter what. It doesn't matter. It does not matter how small the ritual is. As long as you can create a ritual. When you create the ritual, and in the back of your mind, you are working on whatever it is that you need to work on, getting unstuck, just to put it generally, then just by working on the ritual that you have changed. It's all about the process. And it's easier to see when you are working on the ritual that any ultimate change or ultimate destination in your psychology or in your psychological growth is an illusion. Just another example. I don't know, just trying to make this as concrete as possible. Just maybe go to therapy once a week, call your mom and dad, go to a social club, pray if that's something that you would do. Just this constant effort. Not effort so much, just right, because you're not making yourself do anything. You're doing something that is within your comfort zone. Everybody's focused on, gotta go outside your comfort zone, and you do. but not without doing this. It's going to be way more difficult, and you're just going to relapse and go back to, you're talking to girls for 14 days and go back to not talking to girls, and then you just feel like crap. But that's why you have this. But this is the extra benefit of unification, is what I was talking about before, is that, the animus informs the anima. So you can go and say something to your boss, and this informs what is in your psychology to help you know what you need to work on in your anima kind of change, and then it works in the opposite direction. The anima informs the animus by going through your ritual, by going to group every week, by meeting with your therapist, saying hi to Rick at church, praying, meditating, journaling. This informs what you need to do when you do these things in the right way. I have a video on meditation. I think that's the best way to start thinking about this. So yeah, these are just reflections of each other. I mean, the idea is, it's not like, oh, there's two parts of me, a high and a low. Reason and emotion, spiritual, material. It's order and chaos, and they're constantly fighting, as Jordan Peterson would say. No, they're just reflections of each other. We speak of masculine in a feminine way. We can see how the masculine is a reflection of the feminine. We can see how our reasoning is a reflection of what our emotions are. And vice versa. Again, we can speak of the feminine in a masculine way. Right? Creating a structure for your emotions. Any of this ringing a bell? A tesseract. This is what a tesseract is. I know I keep bringing that up. How do we represent 4 dimensions on a 3-dimensional plane? Well, you can't really, but you can create a tesseract for understanding it, so we can just get some grasp of it. Same thing with representing the feminine emotions in a orderly way. The chaos, so to speak, in an orderly way. Although it's not this Christian dualism that Jordan Peterson brings to it. It's not one fighting with the other. When we understand one for what it really is, we can understand the other for what it really is. I mean, it's like a compromise. Yeah. When you have the mind-body dichotomy, when you bring that to it, it's like these two halves of you are constantly fighting. But how about compromise 2.0, huh? How's that for lameness? Compromise 2.0. Sorry, I just got distracted by something. We have to deal with our preconceived notions by talking through them, and we realize, a way that not only satisfies us, but a way that just couldn't have come up with, that we could not have come up with on our own. So that's where the animus change really comes from, is looking at you for what you are, looking at your emotions for what they are, how they work, and from there the animus change arises from it, and you can use this animus kind of change, this directed, concrete, top-down kind of change, to inversely inform who you really are. That's how you work through these things, which we've known forever. We have this thing called the hero's journey. This is what stories have been telling us. How do we make sense out of our unconscious? The unconscious of a story is the second act, the second and third act in a 4-act story. And what does the hero realize in the third act, the fourth act in the 4th act story? Oh boy, good thing all that crap happened. The stuff in the bottom, where you cross the first threshold and before you return the original world up here. Well, good thing all this happened. Because all this made it better for here. This gave me the resolution I needed. But we don't look at our psychological change, or we don't look at our inner psychological change this way. We can only look at our external psychological change. We came up with the structure for an external psychological change, but not an internal psychological change. And I think what I presented here is just, a part of that. And with the unification, we can now do that. And thank you. I'll leave it there. Again, Animus at animusempire.com. animusempire.com/schedule. If you're having a difficult time changing, It's because you're not incorporating one aspect of change properly. Either not doing enough Animus change, but probably if you're listening to this, not just listeners of Animus Air or, just guys who follow what I do, but this is just a cultural problem. The problem is a lack of ritual. The problem is a lack of doing just consistent things you can do, and just doing that enough so that can be the solution. That in itself is the solution. And I'll leave it there. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. And of course, I wish you all the pain and joy that comes from being in touch with reality.